Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm making another personalized card using the Layered Letters alphabet set. Along with the Sheltering Tree, I'm using the leaves for confetti. And I've got my Altenew Label Love, which is my favorite sentiment for light on dark. I'm going to use my MISTI and my grid sheet, which you can print out on acetate. I've just got an A2 size piece of Neenah cardstock, and I'm going to place my letters starting with the middle and moving outward. I'm going to use a C to hold the place for my other G, just for spacing, and then I'll use the G again later. Now that I have my letters all down on my grid sheet, you can see that even though I centered them, the letters on the left are wider than the letters on the right. And so you can see I have 2 boxes on this side and 4 boxes on my grid sheet on the right. So all I have to do is scoot over 1 box, and now I have 3 boxes on the left, 3 on the right, and now I can close my lid and my letters will be positioned exactly in the middle. I'm going to work on my drop shadow first. I'm going to take the C away, and I'm just going to leave that area blank for now. I have some Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, which is a really nice light gray ink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch this lower left corner, and I'm going to move my cardstock up about 1/16 and a half. You just have to make sure that you have the same distance all the way up the left and all the way across the bottom. And now I'm going to close my lid, and this is going to be my drop shadow. And now I'm going to go back up to my stamps up here. I'm going to use Evergreen Bough, and I'm going to ink up just the bottom half. And I have to flip this over because I'm a righty. So I'm going to just ink up from the bottom to just past halfway up the stamp. And I just have to keep looking to make sure that I'm not getting too high, but I'm tapping a pretty good amount of ink here. Now once I get my ink laid down, I'm going to take a tissue and I'm going to wrap it around my finger. I'm going to flip this back over, and I'm just going to do a very light-handed tap across the edge. And this is just going to make sure that I get a fade out of this ink rather than a line where my ink pad has hit my stamp. So I'm going to take my cardstock, I'm going to put it back into the corner like normal, and then I'm going to press this down and get some Evergreen Bough. Now this ink is not exactly the greatest stamping ink, so it does kind of look a little bit blotchy, but I got the best results with the Distress ink. All right, so the next step is to do the top half of the letters. I'm going to use Salty Ocean. I'm going to do the same exact thing. So I'm going to color the top half, and then I'll wipe it up a little bit on the line with my tissue on my finger. So I used some Simon Says Stamp inks, I used some Stampin' Up! Inks, I tried to use some pigment inks. My pigment inks actually worked really well with this blending, but they weren't as bright as the other ones, and so that's why I ended up going with these 2 colors. So, you know, it's a trade-off. And I think the texture look is just a little bit different, and so it didn't really matter that much to me as far as having a little bit dotted texture versus just having a nice smooth ink color. All right, so I'm going to put this back in the corner again and stamp so that my blue is now stamped, and you can see how pretty those 2 colors meet in the center. When you're choosing your colors, I would recommend that you choose 2 colors that are next to each other in the rainbow, like a red and orange or orange and yellow. Just 2 colors like that. All right, now I've got to go back and do the same exact thing with my G again. So I'm going to put my grid sheet back down so I can place it right there next to the other G. And then I'm going to stamp it with the fog, shifting my cardstock up a little bit. And then I'm going to ink it up with my Evergreen Bough halfway up. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Salty Ocean and do the top of my G. And that completes the stamping of the letters. Now I wanted to make my letters pop just a little bit more. This is an optional step. You don't have to do this. I think it looks really good just with the drop shadow. But I took my Copic Multi-Liner 0.3 and I carefully outlined all of these letters. I think the key is to just not move your hand and just move the pen for each of these letters. And that way you can sort of stay right at the edge of the line here. And then also, because the Distress inks don't stamp very crisp, this kind of finished off the edge and made it look a little nicer. All right, back to the MISTI. I'm going to stamp my Altenew You Rock stamp, which is black, white on black. I'm going to use some Hero Hues ink. It's one of the juiciest pads I have. And I actually ended up having to do this twice. Whenever you use a solid stamp, it's always good to get it positioned so that you can stamp it again if you need to. And this kind of added a little bit of volume, I guess you could say, to the card. Now I want a drop shadow on this as well, but I don't want the fog to cover up my sentiment because that sentiment needs to be bright white. So I'm going to cover it up with a Post-it, and then I'm going to move my cardstock the same as I did with the letters, and then I'll ink it up with some fog ink and stamp it down. I really cleaned my stamp well after I stamped it with the Hero Arts black ink. I even tested it on some white paper to make sure I had all that black ink off. But you can see here I have a freeze frame that the drop shadow is a much darker gray than the fog that I had behind the letters. And I can only assume that there was some kind of residual black that didn't stamp out on paper that was reactivated when I used the fog. So I'm not sure exactly what happened here, but I really deliberated about this. I thought about starting over, but I had done this card like 3 times already because the first time I forgot to turn my camera on, and then the second time I forgot to tilt my letters, which I thought was really cute. So anyway, I decided I was just gonna let this go and move on because Maggie's not a card maker, and so she's probably not even gonna notice. Okay, so now moving on to my confetti, I'm just stamping it in some Versamark ink. I'm going to start in the middle here. And then I'm going to sprinkle it with some silver embossing powder. This is like super fine, I think, Ranger embossing powder. That way I can see where I've already stamped. And then I'm going to stamp it again on the right corner, and I'll sprinkle it. And then again on the left corner, and I'll sprinkle it. Now this stamp set comes also with a very small stamp with the same pattern, so it makes it easy for me to fill in the spaces. So I'm just going to stamp it with this small one in the hole on the right, and then again in the hole on the left, sprinkle it, and I didn't have to stamp any more with that small stamp. Then I realized that I should have drawn those black lines from the letters to the top before I did the confetti so that it would be behind some of the confetti pieces. And it was important enough that I decided to just brush away all this embossing powder and then draw my lines. So I'm just going to take a Copic liner, the same one that I used to outline the letters. I'm going to draw a little kind of hook there on the top of each letter. And you want to put the hook where it's facing the top of the card, so it kind of looks like it's actually really hanging. And so on my M, because I put mine slanted, I'm going to put it on that top part of the M. And that is actually another reason why I slanted it, because there wasn't really a good place to put that hook in the middle. And so it wouldn't make sense that it would hang straight up on one side. So that's why I tilted it in the first place. All right, so I'm just drawing these lines up. It doesn't have to be perfect because a lot of it's going to be hidden by the confetti. And now I'm going to sprinkle on my embossing powder again and hope that my Versamark is still all intact. And as luck would have it, my stamp was still there, perfect, and the embossing powder went right back on. So this just goes to show you that you have plenty of time after you stamp with Versamark to get your embossing powder on there. All right, now I'm just going to heat it to set it and get it nice and shiny. I forgot to mention before that I actually trimmed this back a 1/2 inch so that I have a mat of 1/4 inch at the top and 1/4 inch at the bottom, and I did that before my confetti. All right, so I just put some Scotch foam tape on the back, and I'm adhering this to a Hero Arts black note card, which is black on the outside and white on the inside. And that is the card for today. So it took a lot longer than it should have to make this card because of all my mistakes, but I think it turned out really cute. Maggie's gonna like it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.